everybody, it is Scott Schnars, and I am here with my good friend Adon Gottlieb. It's time for some lunch. Oh, Jesus, that's terrible. I'm going to have to go back and edit. This is like our first edit in 11 episodes. But
leave it like that. Leave it raw.
I think I'm going to leave it like that, right? But I got screwed up here because I want to ask a favor of people. We're running an experiment now. We are 10 episodes into Lunch Money. This is our 11th episode, and the feedback that we've gotten has been really positive, which is super exciting, and the reason we keep doing this. Adon and I like money. We hope that you like money, and if you do like money, hopefully this podcast is helping you make some more. And if you do, we'd ask that you like and subscribe to this channel on YouTube. We tend to push this on LinkedIn first, but if you watch it on YouTube, I tend to push it at least a day or two early, and you can get access to it there. But today we've got a pretty exciting topic. We are going to be talking about, here we are, it's February 13th when we're recording this. It'll probably be the 16th or 17th when we publish this. We're halfway through the first quarter for 90% of companies out there. And it's really critical that as a sales leader, you do an assessment on where do you stand right now. And we want to talk about what are the three things to ensure that you're going to hit the number for this quarter. But then we want to talk about what are three things that you can do to lay the foundation to ensure that you're going to hit the number for the year as well. And I think this is where things get really, kind of the rubber meets the road. Everybody's back from sales kickoff. They've got their comp plans. They know what their numbers look like. And now here we are. We've got 5 weeks, 6 weeks left to go in the quarter. How do we make sure that you hit the number?
Just to add one more thing to that,
Yeah.
I think it's like, as you mentioned, coming back from SKO, you've got the numbers, you got the team. You also kind of cleaned up your pipeline. You have a better understanding with distributed QBRs on what's going on with every one of the deals and kind of how they space out throughout the year. So you got to have a good sense now of where you stand. And you probably are facing, these two problems we talked about. One is, okay, how do I make this quarter? And the other one, how do I make the rest of the year? And if you're... And if your quarter is all made and the year is all made by now, then you're very lucky that you got away with some good numbers. I think most of us will have to deal with a gap, whether you don't have enough people, or you don't have enough pipeline, or you don't have enough something else with a P. It just needs to get this. There's a bunch of P stuff we could put in there. But this is kind of, you have to deal with it. And the beautiful, it's kind of like whether you're an individual rep or you're a manager or a CRO, or you always have this duality of like, I need to make the month, I need to make the quarter, but I also need to make sure I make the year. Because it is annual plans and it is all thinking that way. And I think today's episode is a good example of like, how do you balance the two? Because you sit here, middle of February, I got to first think about my quarter, second think about my year kind of thing. So,
yeah. And I think that the hardest part about sales leadership is if you miss Q1, it kind of sets you up for a bad year because it becomes, the numbers tend to get higher quarter after quarter. And it becomes harder and harder to dig yourself out of that hole. Adon, you kind of hit on the first one, right? If I'm thinking about how am I going to hit my number for this quarter, I'm just back from sales kickoff. You got to get ruthless with your pipeline management. And this is the opportunity as a sales leader to really sit down with your team and have the true heart to heart and identify, are the deals that are real and are they winnable versus those that are just taking up room in your CRM? Right, and I think that for most sales leaders, the most important thing that you can do right now when you're looking at these deals that you absolutely have to get closed this quarter is, number one, just be honest with yourself and figure that out. But two, now is the time when you want to start to reprioritize the resources that you're going to need in order to win these high probability deals and accelerate that movement through the funnel. You can't wait until the last week of March to go tap on the shoulder of somebody in product and say, oh, hey, can you help me save this thing? Like, it's going to happen. So you really have to work closely with all of your internal stakeholders. It's not just the reps and ensuring that they have a clear closing strategy for each one of their key deals, but it's also really critical that you're looking at all of the other stakeholders in the company that are going to ensure that this deal is going to come in and that you have the resources that you need to win to be successful with that.
Yeah, remember we've done things like these deal teams that would just jump on big deals or small deal, or whatever deals that could happen.
Yeah. The second thing that I wanted to talk about that I think is a really easy one, if you're a sales leader, if you don't have the deals that are there, really good campaign that you can run is just a win back or an expansion blitz, where you're focusing on closing expansion opportunities within your existing customers. Right, let's pick up the phone, let's call all of them. We're not waiting to the last week of the quarter to call them and beg for money. We're building strong, positive relationships now that will turn into some money down the road. And then at Cloud Marathon, like you and I saw this, like the number of deals that we won because of we would go back and re-engage with our prospects that went dark in Q2, Q3, Q4 of the prior year, but showed a little bit of interest. Anytime that you can go back to those, oftentimes those will come back as big winners. And then the last one in this category is really, I think that a lot of customers love to hear from the executives in the organization, whether it is the VP of sales / CRO, it's the CEO, it's the head of product, whoever it might be. This is a great opportunity to do quarterly business reviews. Bring in your executives, get them involved in the key negotiations, get them involved in pitching the product, and really leverage them to help push the deals over the finish line. They can't be your end-all, be-all savior. That's your job as a salesperson. That's your job as a sales leader. But leveraging those executives can oftentimes help accelerate those deals to the finish line that you need.
Yeah, and to add to, I think to your points, to your first point around clean up the pipeline, there's always this problem of, is it better to have some deals than no deals? But you have to remember, it's not good to have bad deals because it's just going to suck up your time. I think to the point about reaching the customers, Q1 has a special element into it from all these people in Q4 that wanted to do something and it was the end of the year, something was going. This re-engagement campaign has some unique magic that works in Q1 that you can take advantage of that you don't get in other quarters of things getting picked up again and people are back from vacation and so forth. So take advantage of it. And I think your third point there, executive, is such a good one because it needs to be part of your regular practice and it helps get things on track or back on track or getting to the finish line. Just use that and it's not that some of you as the individual reps or even the managers cannot deliver some of these messages by yourselves or iterate. It just helps you move forward. Take advantage of it.
Yeah. 100% agree with you. And then the last one that I would think about if I'm sitting there looking down the barrel of a number for Q1, you're going to have deals at various stages in your pipeline. I think that one of the most critical things that you can do is really lean on the urgency for those late stage deals. Like we've got 5 weeks left to go. What are are there incentives that you can roll out or pricing strategies to encourage some immediate action here to get people to sign off by the end of the month? Do you even have a mutual action plan that says and client alignment that has them buying something by the end of the quarter? And if you call the client up and ask them, hey, can you get this signed off by the end of March? Are they going to look at you like you got 3 heads and wonder where that number came from? Or do they think that that's realistic? You want to align with procurement. Like if you're not talking to legal and procurement right now, 5 weeks to go in the quarter, you're starting to run out of runway on those things. And yes, the legal team can make things happen and the procurement teams can make things happen. And, they've all gone to where they work, till midnight on the last day of the quarter. Nobody likes that. No, it's not going to befriend you to anybody if you ask them to do that. So start aligning with that legal and procurement team now. Get those terms in front of them to ensure that any blockers are out of the way by the time you need to get this done. And then finally, I think it's really critical that your reps are handling the objections proactively and that they're aligning with the customer's needs and their Q1 priorities on this, and they're not just hey, like I talked to this customer and they said they can't buy this by the end of the quarter, so I guess we'll just move that to close lost, or we'll kick the can down the road. So many deals get lost because of a lack of urgency. I'll put a link to the article that Jason Lemkin wrote recently talking about how an obscene percentage of deals are lost due to no activity, no action, went dark, whatever your company calls it. And really what that gets down to is just a general lack of urgency. So again, I would strongly encourage you to have more urgency in your deals than less at this point. Because if you create that friction and you create that urgency now, it doesn't make you look like an asshole if you're trying to create that urgency with a week left to go in the quarter and you're there just begging for money at that point. You're being professional and you're doing it properly and subtly now versus waiting till the last minute.
Yeah, and it goes back to being proactive. We talked about it in a few other episodes as well. It's just you have to figure out, why they should do anything, why you should do it now, why you should do it with you guys, and run with that and make sure that you help the prospect manage the process for themselves so they can get it done. I mean, they spend time with you for a reason. So if it doesn't get anywhere, it's a lost time on their side as well.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the 3 things where I in a leadership position right now. Those are absolutely the 3 things that I would be thinking about on how are we going to ensure that we hit our number by the end of this quarter? And like I said, that lays the foundation. Making the number in Q1 lays the foundation for hitting the number for the year. So Adon, like as you think about at an even higher level, okay, now I've got to make the number for the year. What are the things that the great sales leaders are working on right now to ensure that they're getting to their goals for the year?
As I mentioned earlier, it's this duality of the world. And by the way, it goes, everything we talked about earlier and we're going to talk about next, goes at the level of the individual AE and the managers and the CROs, and they all have to deal with the same problems, each of them with a different, slightly different scope. But so in front Q1, you're going to run the things that we talked about, but this is also your unique opportunity to try and set up for the year, because just like you had the gaps before, you're going to have the gaps for the year of how you're going to go ahead and make your number. And so you need to think about that in terms of like, this is what I got. So there's pipeline initiatives. There's a long list. The one I wanted to talk about specifically, because it's very unique for now, for the mid of Q1, and is looking into adding some bigger accounts into your mix. It takes a longer push, right? But you got time, because even if you get a lot more discount if you missed your Q1 numbers, or your Q number numbers already lower than the other ones are. So it's an easier environment to go add things into that. And so adding the big deals and just putting it in your thought process and adding it there's basically three things about big deals you have to think about and start putting in place. So first of all, and big doesn't all have to be multi-million-dollar deals, right? I always like to, if you can find things that are 10x than what your usual average sales price is, or at a zero, things like that you could find and identify. Sometimes, how do you
define big? Like I've always thought about big as like 5 to 10x larger than the average deal size.
So I would push everybody to think 10x as probably the beginning of what big is. Or sometimes I say it at a zero, or because it would be meaningful and would make a big difference. And good, 10x is good because here's the average is at this point of the year, you're most likely about 20% to 30% shy of how you make the number. If you really got an aggressive or a good quarter in front of you, whether you're missing people or you're missing pipeline, something will be missing. And so that X will make a significant impact on you if you get 2 or 3 of those. This is how you make your gap, one way. So when you think about it, if you think dimension number one, which is really important, and I think is a driving principle, is think about play for potential. Okay. Sometimes you get confused by the size of the company. Sometimes you get confused by what they're talking about, or a scope of, or a vertical that is interesting. Go look at the potential. And the way you figure out your potential is look at what would be a maximized deployment of your product or your service look like. If they use everything, what would that look like? And that would give you the scope of like, okay, that's my potential here. And now map it up to, okay, what would be the ideal customer and their use cases for that maximum use? That's the formula. Now, it's not an easy one. That's why I say you have to start it early. But you really got to go look at your ICP, look at your use cases, figure them out. If they use everything, what would it look like? This is how you create that picture of, here's potential. Now I can go and figure out where do I find these accounts with that potential. And that's your step 2, right? Find these accounts, right? Look at what you got active in the pipeline. Look at what you have in your new customers that are the new pipeline is being generated. Look at the existing customers and see, can I find anybody who fits that kind of a profile of potential? And this is where you pick them from. It's going to be a mix where you're going to pick it from. And lastly, think about how you're going to go and approach it. And there's, on a high level, 3 ways to get it after it. One is the land and expand, which basically means, I start, and then after they finish their first step, I'm going to go engage with them, and then we'll talk about the next step, and then start kind of upselling and selling it throughout the process. Second one is start small. And the difference between that and land and expand is that your conversation with them was on the bigger picture to start with. They're just going to gradually move through some gates and things needs to be proven, but it's clear where we're all going. Versus the first one where you're like, I'm going to let them know as we go along. And the third one is just go big. Say, hey, here's the scope. Let's go take it. And really take that right now as you look, and it kind of matches to the first part of our conversation of like, how do I make the quarter? You want to start looking at things that, high potential. How do I go about it? I can still make it in the quarter as my land, or as my start small, and then I could make it up for the rest of the year to make it bigger. But really start building that, add that. Okay, it doesn't have to be multi-million, just 10x from what your ASP is.
Yeah, and that's a question, and I think you've been in meetings when I've asked that, right? If you go back to what I was saying about working with existing customers and seeing if there's upsell opportunities, like a really easy question to ask is, hey, if you were going to spend $10 million with us, what does that look like? Like, let's define what $10 million gets you. Let's define what the process is. Like, I'm not asking you to sign a contract today, but just tell me, like, you buy $10 million worth of other stuff. What does that look like for your company? And
by the way, this is a really good point.
Really honest answers there. But
yeah, but this is a really, yeah, and part of what they're afraid of doing it is that you're afraid of the answer. And this is where you have to do the homework I talked about. Like, figure out, this is really my ICP. Did I say earlier ISP instead of ICP? I don't know. This is really my ICP.
No way.
Right? These are really the use cases. Yeah, I know we like the money, so I'm thinking about the money. This is really my ISP. This is the use cases that they're going to be using it. And this is how maximum leverage of my solution is going to look like in the world. So when I ask that question of like, what would 10 million look like? I should have a draft of the answer. Here's what it should look like. Because you're afraid that they're going to say, I don't know. I don't think we're going to spend 10 million with you. Oh, let me tell you what 10 million would look like. So that part, and you need some help on that, right? You need product marketing, you need product to think about. You need to kind of craft that, how do I get the answer? But if they don't, sit with your SC, figure out that answer for that customer and come prepared. So if you're afraid, you don't ask questions that you're afraid that you're not going to like the answer. So get an answer prepared. And so if you don't like the answer, you switch their answer with your answer.
Okay, so we've talked about big customers. Got to go get those because those are going to be the year makers. What else?
Yeah, I think there's other things. I wanted to kind of focus on this because I think the others are more usually embedded into how people operate in today's world. You go and you're looking at your pipeline, and we'll have probably other episodes talking about demand gen and how you better convert, and looking at your ecosystems and your partnerships and how to do this. I think the bigger deal is a thing that you really have a lot of control of, whether, again, if you're an AE or you're a manager or you're a CRO, there's a little bit more control over it. Needs a little bit of homework, but needs a good execution. We'll probably talk in other episodes about how do you run campaigns on larger deals, because this has some nuances to that. But just in terms of identifying and say, we're all facing 20 to 30% shortage right now. Where am I going to get it out of us? I'm going to run a lot of initiatives. I want you guys to think about adding this new initiative into the play of, bigger deals and how to take it from an abstract idea to starting to turn into something real.
Now, here's one for you, Adon, because this could turn into big dollars, or it could just be like a minor needle move here. But what are your thoughts on optimizing the sales process and optimizing sales productivity? You've got a lot of blocks in approval processes, contract negotiations are slow, whatever it might be. Like, do you find that if you start to pick away at some of those blockers for the sales team, does that have a significant enough impact to hit the number for the year?
Yes, first of all. And I think it's not just the fact that you're shortening the process. It's really the fact that you're starting to do your homework about thinking exactly what needs to happen for this to become a deal. And that becomes a valuable service to your customers, because they don't know many of the times what needs to happen. They might know their scope, they might know what problem they're trying to solve, but this whole process of getting it from here's a problem that I got and I'm trying to solve it and going through the organization, and especially in today's markets where you get a lot of approvals going on, is complicated. And part of your value as a salesperson is to help your customers get to be able to purchase what they really like and wanted to get to solve their problem. And so I think it's not just you want to have those because it would make the process faster, and this is one of your KPIs you're going to be looking at. But it really has that second layer of, now I really am figuring out everything that needs to happen. And now I become really a valuable asset to the whole engagement and to my customer that adds to even your differentiators and your competitive advantage.
Love that.
And so, yeah, but so yes, super efficiency is important. Super yes, because it really gets you to do the homework.
And then we talked about building strategic customers, but there's also an opportunity around building strategic partnerships. And when you can really lean heavily on a good partnership, that can turn into significant multiplier in terms of the revenue that you're generating.
Yeah, and I think, as I mentioned, I kind of did a deep dive on the bigger one because I felt people don't have a good grasp on it. I think there's a discussion about how do you really better leverage your channels and your ecosystems, and what do you even look, what's the channel versus what ecosystem, and how do you leverage them? You should definitely have in your mix something around a third at least coming in from these. Basically, here's where do you get deals from, right? There's the people that find you, which is kind of the demand gen kind of motions, right? Those that you find them, which is the more the outbound kind of approach. And those two lanes operating either through your marketing and SDRs to marketing to publish stuff out and then people find you and connect with you, or in SDRs or BDRs reaching out and connecting with people. The same thing happens with your ecosystems and your partnerships, right? You either advertise through them and so people can hear about you and come over through them, or through them you go reach out to people that they're customers and working together on these things. And leveraging their, people find them and they find us kind of thing. So that mix is, you want to do it either doing it directly with sales individuals, with the marketing organizations, or with the partnerships. And this is what I got my playing field to do with.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. So a lot of good action items here. We've got a few things that you can do to ensure that you're going to hit the number for Q1. We've got a few things that you can do here to ensure that you're going to lay a good foundation for the year. I'll put that into the show notes. I hope that this makes you a lot of money, or we hope that this makes you a lot of money, because Adon and I like money. We hope that you like it too. I would say that if you do like this, we'd ask that you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and sign up for our regular newsletter at lunchmoney.media. Thanks, everybody.